The crowd at Gate 37 fell silent as Emma Reeves, CEO of Horizon Technologies, gripped the microphone with white knuckles. Flight 219 to Chicago is delayed indefinitely, she announced, her voice cracking. All eyes turned to Mark Winters, clutching his boarding pass, confusion giving way to recognition as he realized who had just personally halted his flight home. What happened next would change both their lives forever. If you're moved by this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us how life's detours often lead to our most meaningful destinations. Mark Winters checked his watch for the fifth time in as many minutes. His flight was scheduled to board in 20 minutes, and he couldn't afford any delays. Back in Chicago, his 8-year-old daughter Lily would be waiting, counting down the hours until his return. 3 days away from her felt like an eternity, even if this business trip to San Francisco had been necessary. The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos, travelers rushing to gates, announcements echoing overhead, the smell of overpriced coffee permeating the air. Mark adjusted his worn leather messenger bag and thumbed through the photos on his phone. Lily at the park. Lily with chocolate ice cream smeared across her face. Lily on her first day of 3rd grade, her smile revealing a newly missing front tooth. "Daddy, bring me back something with a bridge on it," she'd requested before he left, her understanding of San Francisco limited to the Golden Gate Bridge she'd seen in movies. The small souvenir snow globe in his carry-on felt inadequate, but it was the best he could do on a tight schedule and even tighter budget. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. "We will begin boarding Flight 219 to Chicago in approximately 15 minutes. Please have your boarding passes ready." Mark exhaled with relief. On time. He'd make it home for Lily's science fair tomorrow morning. He'd promised. "Excuse me, are you Mark Winters?" He turned to find a woman in a tailored charcoal suit standing beside him, her expression unreadable. Something about her seemed vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place her. "Yes, that's me. Emma Reeves, CEO of Horizon Technologies." She extended her hand, which he shook automatically, his mind racing to understand why the head of one of the country's leading tech companies would approach him in an airport. "I know this is unorthodox," she continued, "but I need to speak with you. Urgently." Mark frowned. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reeves, but my flight boards in 15 minutes, and I need to get home to my daughter." "That's precisely what I want to discuss." Her voice lowered. "The presentation you gave yesterday at the conference, your software solution for predictive healthcare analytics, it's exactly what we've been searching for." Mark's presentation had been scheduled in the smallest conference room, tucked away during the least desirable time slot. He'd assumed barely anyone had paid attention. "I appreciate your interest, but I can email you the details when I get home. I really can't miss this flight." Emma's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Mr. Winters, I'm prepared to offer you a partnership that could change everything for your startup. But I need you here tonight. My board is assembled for an emergency meeting in 2 hours, and this can't wait until tomorrow." Before Mark could respond, Emma turned and walked directly to the gate agent's desk. He watched in disbelief as she spoke quietly to the agent, who nodded repeatedly before reaching for the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we regret to inform you that Flight 219 to Chicago will be delayed indefinitely due to technical difficulties. We apologize for any inconvenience." A collective groan rose from the waiting passengers. Mark stood frozen, watching as Emma returned to him, determination etched across her face. "What did you just do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I bought us time," she replied. "And before you ask, yes, I can do that. The flight will leave later tonight, I promise. But right now, I need you to come with me." Mark felt anger rising in his chest. "Do you have any idea what you're asking? My 8-year-old daughter is waiting for me. I'm all she has." Something flickered in Emma's eyes, recognition, perhaps even pain. "I understand more than you know. But what I'm offering could secure her future. 2 hours of your time tonight could mean never having to choose between a business trip and being there for her again. Mark hesitated, his thumb hovering over Lily's contact in his phone. I need to call my neighbor who's watching her. Of course, Emma nodded. And while you do that, I'll arrange for a video call so you can explain to your daughter yourself. Sometimes it's easier when they can see your face. The unexpected understanding in her voice made Mark look at Emma more carefully. Behind the power suit and commanding presence, he glimpsed something familiar, the same worry lines he saw in his own mirror every morning, the subtle signs of someone carrying responsibilities too heavy for one person. 3 hours later, Mark sat in a glass-walled conference room 52 floors above San Francisco, surrounded by the most influential executives in the tech industry. His healthcare analytics software, the project he'd coded late at night after Lily went to bed, the dream he'd been pursuing since his wife's death from a misdiagnosed condition 3 years ago, was projected on the wall behind him. What Mr. Winters has developed, Emma explained to her board, is an algorithm that could reduce diagnostic errors by up to 47%. It identifies patterns human doctors might miss, especially for rare conditions. She didn't need to add what they all knew, that Horizon Technologies had been trying to develop something similar for years without success. Mark watched the faces around the table as they studied his work. He thought of Lily, who had taken the news of his delayed return with surprising grace during their video call. Is it because your computer thing might help sick people, Daddy? She'd asked. When he nodded, she'd simply said, then you should stay. Just don't forget my snow globe. The board meeting stretched into dinner, which turned into a negotiation that left Mark's head spinning. By 9 o'clock, preliminary papers were being drawn up for a partnership that would provide his small startup with resources he'd only dreamed of, while maintaining his control over the project's direction. We'll have the final contracts ready by morning, Emma said as they rode the elevator down to the lobby. A car will take you to the airport for the first flight to Chicago. Mark nodded, still processing everything that had happened. Why me? He finally asked. Horizon could have acquired any number of healthcare startups. Why go to these lengths for mine? The elevator doors opened, but Emma made no move to exit. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed the button for the top floor. There's something I want to show you, she said quietly. The executive floor was deserted at this hour. Emma led Mark past her assistant's empty desk and into her office, a space that somehow managed to be both imposing and surprisingly personal. One wall was lined with industry awards and recognitions, but it was the opposite wall that drew Mark's attention. A large photograph of a young boy, perhaps 12 or 13, smiling from a hospital bed. My son, Nathan, Emma said, following his gaze. He was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder when he was 10. For 2 years, doctors treated him for everything else before they figured it out. Mark felt a chill run through him. Is he? He's in remission now, Emma said quickly. But those 2 years of misdiagnoses caused damage that can't be undone. He'll never play sports the way he wanted to. And I can't help thinking that if something like your software had existed then. She trailed off, and Mark understood with sudden clarity. This wasn't just a business acquisition for her. It was personal. I recognized your motivation the moment I saw your presentation, Emma continued. The way you talked about reducing diagnostic errors, the passion behind the technical details. You've lost someone, haven't you? Mark nodded, his throat tight. My wife. 3 years ago. By the time they correctly diagnosed her condition, it was too late. And now you're raising your daughter alone, Emma said softly. Just like I'm raising Nathan alone. His father couldn't handle the stress of Nathan's illness. He left during the 2nd year of treatments. The parallels between their lives hung in the air between them. 2 single parents, both driven by personal tragedy to change a system that had failed their families. I'm sorry about the dramatic airport intervention, Emma said after a moment. But when I realized you were leaving today, I couldn't let the opportunity slip away. Not when your work could prevent other families from experiencing what ours did. Mark looked at the photo of Nathan again, thinking of Lily. She wants to be a doctor, you know. My daughter. Ever since her mom died. She says she's going to fix people so they don't have to say goodbye. Emma smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. Nathan wants to design video games for kids in hospitals. Says they need better distractions during the boring parts. Smart kid. Like his mother, Emma replied with a hint of pride. Now, let's get you on that plane. I've arranged for the last flight to Chicago tonight. You'll be home in time to see Lily before she goes to school. The next morning, Mark stood in the back of Lily's elementary school gymnasium, watching as she confidently explained her science fair project to the judges. Her display board, decorated with carefully drawn diagrams of the human heart, stood out among the typical volcano models and plant growth experiments. My daddy's computer helps doctors see things they might miss, she was saying, pointing to a simplified flowchart Mark had helped her create. Because sometimes people get sick with things that are hard to find, like hide and seek but really important. One of the judges smiled. And what made you interested in medical diagnostics, young lady? That's a very advanced topic for someone your age. Lily's expression grew serious. My mom got sick, and the doctors couldn't figure it out fast enough. But Daddy's making sure that doesn't happen to other mommies. Mark felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. A text from Emma, how's the science fair going? Did our future doctor win? He smiled, typing back, judges still deliberating. But she's already talking about improvements for our software. The reply came quickly, Nathan wants to meet her. Says any kid who likes science instead of boring stuff is worth knowing. Dinner when you're both back in San Francisco next week? Mark watched as the judges moved to the next exhibit, Lily bouncing on her toes with excitement. 6 months ago, he'd been coding alone in his apartment, trying to balance his startup with single parenthood, both endeavors constantly on the verge of collapse. Now, with Horizon's partnership, his software was being implemented in 3 major hospital systems, with more on the waiting list. We did it, Daddy. Lily came running toward him, a blue ribbon clutched in her hand. First place. Ms. Peterson says I should consider medical research when I grow up. He scooped her up, snow globe forgotten as she wrapped her arms around his neck. I'm so proud of you, Lil. Are we still going to San Francisco next week? She asked as he set her down. You promised I could see the real bridge, not just the snow globe one. Absolutely. And we're having dinner with Ms. Reeves and her son. He's excited to meet you. Lily's eyes widened. The lady who made your plane wait? Is she still scary? Mark laughed, remembering how intimidated he'd been that day at the airport. Not scary. Just determined. Like someone else I know. He tapped her nose gently. As they walked hand in hand toward the exit, Mark thought about the chain of events that had led them here. One delayed flight. One chance meeting. Sometimes, the detours we resist most desperately turn out to be exactly where we needed to go all along. 6 months later, Mark stood at the podium in Horizon Technologies' main auditorium, addressing a room full of healthcare professionals and tech industry leaders. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the interface of what was now called the Winters Horizon Diagnostic Assistant, already credited with dozens of early diagnoses of rare conditions. 3 years and 4 months ago, I lost my wife to a condition that should have been diagnosed months earlier, he began, his voice steady. I started coding this system at my kitchen table, with no resources beyond my own determination and a promise I made at her funeral, that her death would not be meaningless. In the front row, Lily sat between Emma and Nathan, the 3 of them forming an unlikely but supportive unit. Over the past months, as Mark and Emma had worked closely to refine and implement the software, their professional relationship had evolved into a friendship, then something deeper neither of them had been looking for. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Winters Horizon Diagnostic Assistant will be made available at no cost to children's hospitals nationwide, Mark continued. Because no child should lose a parent to a missed diagnosis, and no parent should lose a child. The applause was thunderous. As Mark stepped away from the podium, Emma took his place, her professional demeanor firmly in place despite the emotion of the moment. Horizon Technologies has always been committed to innovation, she began. But innovation without purpose is just technology for technology's sake. What Mark Winters brought to us was not just brilliant code, it was purpose. Her eyes found Mark's in the audience. Sometimes the most important business decisions aren't made in boardrooms. Sometimes they happen at airport gates, when you recognize that letting someone walk away would be the biggest mistake of your career, and perhaps your life. Later that evening, as they celebrated with a small dinner at Emma's home overlooking the bay, Mark found himself on the balcony, watching as Lily and Nathan huddled over a tablet, collaborating on what they called version 2.0 of Lily's science fair project. They get along well, Emma said, joining him with 2 glasses of wine. Better than I expected, given how different they are. Mark accepted the glass with a smile. They both know what it's like to lose something important. It creates a bond. Like ours? Emma asked quietly. Mark looked at her, really looked at her. The powerful CEO was still there in her posture, her confidence. But he also saw the mother who had fought for her son, the woman who had recognized something in Mark's work that others had missed, the person who had been brave enough to stop a plane because she believed in possibilities. I'm glad you didn't let me fly home that night, he said simply. Emma's smile was soft in the fading light. I needed you here. From inside, they heard Lily's excited voice, Dad. Emma. Nathan figured out how to make the algorithm work for the science project. Come see. As they turned to go inside, Mark caught a glimpse of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, its lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. 6 months ago, it had been just a picture on a snow globe he'd bought to keep a promise. Now it was becoming a landmark in his own life, a symbol of connections made, of passages from one phase to another. Sometimes, the bridges we need most aren't the ones we plan to cross, but the ones built unexpectedly by people who see in us what we cannot see in ourselves. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of unexpected connections, second chances, and the beautiful detours that often lead us exactly where we need to be. Remember, sometimes the flight delays in our lives are actually redirecting us to our most important destinations.